A boss be rising, BBTV's igniting, turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel roads to the neon dreams, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss be rising, sky ain't even the ceiling, when she hits go live, everybody feels it.
Well, howdy, y'all. It is Saturday night, and it is Jukebox Journey, and I've got one for you. Another dry night. Forgive me, I woke up about 30 minutes ago from a nap. Not been a good day. Anyway, let's get into this. There are some artists that you can talk about in pieces. You can pull out moments and headlines and specific events and build a conversation around those snapshots. And then there are artists where none of what really works, or none of that really works, unless you take the time to walk the full path. Because what they become, it really only makes sense when you understand how they got there in the first place. And tonight, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're not stopping at one moment. We're not picking one headline. We're stepping into the full journey of an artist who, on the surface, looks like he arrived already polished, already complete, already in control of everything he does. But underneath, that is a story that took time to build, a story that moved through stages that didn't always look like success. Moments where things didn't line up the way they were supposed to, of course. That happens, where the industry didn't quite know what to do with him, where he had to find his place instead of being handed one. Now, what makes the story hit is not just where he ended up, it's how each part of connects to the next, how nothing in that journey was wasted, how every single step, every shift, every adjustment added something that would eventually become part of what we see now. And that's what Jukebox Journey is really about. It's about taking the time to move through that path, to see the connections, to understand, dogs, to understand how one phrase leads into another. Because when you do that, the music hits differently. The performances hit differently. The entire experience, okay? Thank you, Dalton. Good to see you. Bruh, Amanda Jordan. Yes, bruh. What's up? So, the performance, it hits differently. The entire experience changes. And tonight, we're stepping into that with Bruno Mars. No, he's not rock star, but we're about music, not just rock. Now, listen. Bruno Mars, not the artist you see on stage, not the voice you recognize, but the full path from where he started to where he stands now. Because when you walk the path, you start to see something deeper than just success. You start to see how an artist builds something that lasts. And that's where the journey begins. All right, so we're going to get into it here. See, there are some artists whose story only really makes sense when you go all the way back to the beginning, not just to where the hits started, but to where the foundation was laid. Because when you look at Bruno Mars, now it can feel like he just appeared fully formed, right? Like he stepped into the spotlight already knowing exactly who he was. But that's not how this story starts at all. It starts in Honolulu, Hawaii, with a kid named Peter Hernandez growing up in a family where music wasn't something you discovered later in life. It was something you were surrounded by from the very beginning. His parents were performers. His home was filled with sound, rehearsals, shows, energy. And before most kids even understood what performing is, he's already on stage, already learning what it feels like to stand in front of people and hold their attention, performing as a young Elvis impersonator, not as a joke, but as a real act, moving, singing, working a crowd in a way that most people don't figure out until much later in life. They, if they ever do it all, and that matters more than people realize, because what he's building in those moments isn't just talent, it's instinct, it's timing, it's understanding how a performance lives and breathes in real time. And those are the kinds of things that don't show up overnight. They build slowly and quietly over years. And he's grown up, and as he grows up in that environment, he absorbs everything, different styles, different eras of music, different ways of performing. And instead of locking into one sound, he develops kind of flexibility, an ability to move between influences without losing himself in them. That's pretty crazy. And eventually, that foundation leads him to make a move that a lot of people underestimate when they look back at his success. Because leaving Hawaii and going to Los Angeles sounds like the obvious next step, right? When you say it out loudly or quietly, that seems correct. But in reality, it's a complete reset. It's stepping away from a place where you are known, where you have support, where you already have an identity, and putting yourself into a space where none of that exists, where nobody is waiting for you, nobody is investing in you yet. And when he gets there, the path doesn't open up the way people expect it to, because the industry doesn't immediately understand what to do with him. He doesn't fit neatly into a category. He's not the obvious choice for the lanes that are already established. And that becomes a problem in a system that relies on quick labels. This is where the story slows down in a way that people don't always talk about, because this is the part where things don't click right away, where deals don't turn into breakthroughs and opportunities don't lead to visibility. It's where you start to realize that being talented isn't the same thing as being placed correctly. And instead of forcing his way through as an artist, he shifts his position, moving behind the scenes into writing and producing, working with other artists, building songs that other voices will carry, learning how records are structured, how hits are crafted, how decisions are made in rooms that the audience never sees. And this phase is easily to overlook when you're only focused on the spotlight. But it's one of the most important parts of his journey, because it's where he builds control. It's where he learns the system from the inside, where he understands not just how to perform a song, but how to construct one, how to shape it, how to make it connect. And while all of that is happening, the world still doesn't fully see him yet. He's contributing, he's creating, but he's not the face of it. And that creates a different kind of pressure, because you know what you're capable of, you know what you bring to the table, but you're watching other people step into the spotlight with pieces of what you helped build. And for a lot of people, that's where they settle. That's where they decide, like, this is enough. This is the role they'll play. But that's not where his story stops, because there's still a push to step forward, to move from behind the scenes into the front. And when that shift begins, It doesn't happen all at once. It happens gradually. Features, collaborations, songs where his voice starts to become recognizable. Pardon me, I'm parched. So, this is where people start to hear his voice and ask, who is that? And that question is important because it means something is changing. It means the door is starting to open, and then you reach the moment where everything begins to turn in a way that can't be ignored. When he releases Just the Way You Are, and suddenly he's not just a name in the credits, he's the artist, front and center. And the song connects in a way that goes beyond just being popular. It resonates, it spreads, it reaches people in a way that signals this is more than a one off moment. And from there, the momentum builds. More songs, more performances, more visibility. But even in that breakthrough, the story isn't finished because success doesn't automatically give you identity. It just gives you the opportunity to find it. And that's where the first part of this journey really lands. Not in the moment he became visible, but in everything that came before it. The years of performing before anyone was watching, the move that reset everything, the time spent building behind the scenes, and the gradual climb into a space where, the world finally starts to recognize what had been there all along. And when you see it that way, when you walk through it step by step, the breakthrough doesn't feel sudden anymore. It feels like the result of a path that was being built long before anyone outside of it knew his name. And I think we all know his name. Some people don't like him, some people do. Personally, I do. I like to sing his music. And yes, most of the people that I choose to sing their music, it's because I can sing their music. It's not just a feeling, it's a fact, you know. There's lots going on there. But so by the time Bruno Mars reaches the point where his sound, his identity, and his performance style are fully locked in, the story shifts again in a way that lots of people don't always recognize right away. Because this is no longer about breaking through or even proving that he belongs. This is about what happens when an artist reaches a level where everything they do is expected to land, where every release carries weight. The question is no longer who is this, but what will he do next? And, that kind of expectation can quietly become its own kind of pressure. Because once you've established yourself at that level, there's no going back to being overlooked. Every move is seen, every decision is measured. And what makes this phase of his journey stand out is how intentional he becomes about navigating that space. Because instead of like flooding the industry with constant releases to stay visible, he takes the opposite approach. He becomes selective, deliberate, almost calculated in when and how he shows up, right? You know, and that choice alone separates him from a lot of artists who feel the need to stay in constant rotation just to remain relevant. Because what Bruno understands at this point is that presence is not just about frequency, it's about impact. It's about making sure that when he does stop or step forward, it means something, and you can see that shift clearly. It's clear as day as he's moved into projects like 24 Karat Magic, where everything is built around a cohesive vision, not just a collection of songs, but a full experience. The sound, the visuals, the performances. I mean, come on. He's a good dancer. It's the aesthetic, all aligned in a way to feel that feels complete from start to finish. And that album doesn't just continue what he was doing before, it refines it, it sharpens it, it leans even further into the influences that shaped him while making it unmistakably his. And this is where his relationship with the past becomes more visible, because now he is not just drawing from those earlier eras of funk, soul, and performance driven music. He is actively reintroducing them into a modern audience, translating those elements into something that feels current without stripping away what made them powerful in the first place. And that requires a level of understanding that goes way beyond surface inspiration, because it's not just about sound, it's about feel, emotion. It's about the way a groove moves, the way performance builds, the way an audience connects in real time. And that's where his early foundation shows up again, because everything he learned from performing as a kid, from studying how artists hold a stage, watching how songs are constructed behind the scenes, all of that is now being applied at the highest level. And you can see it is not just in the recordings, but in the performances themselves. The precision, the control, the way every movement, every transition, every moment is intentional. And that's where the influence of artists like James Brown, Prince, Michael Jackson become more than just a reference point. It becomes part of the language he speaks on stage, not as imitation, but as continuation, as someone who understands the lineage and knows how to carry it forward. And as this phase continues, collaboration becomes another key part of how he expands that identity. Because instead of isolating himself as a solo act, he brings other artists into his world in a way that feels natural, that feels like an extension of what he's already building. And that reaches a new level when he forms Silk Sonic with Anderson, Puck, and a project that doesn't feel like a side experiment, but likely a like a fully realized concept built around honoring a specific era of music while still making it feel alive in the present. And what stands out about Silk Sonic is not just the sound, it's the chemistry, the way the performances feel lived in, the way the music feels like it belongs to a space where time overlaps, where past and present exist at the same time. And that project reinforces something that has been building throughout his entire journey, which is Bruno Mars is not just an artist who makes songs. He is an artist who builds experiences, who understands how to take influences, refine them, and present them in a way that feels both familiar and new. And as all this unfolds, the way he is viewed within the industry continues to shift, because now he is not just being compared to his peers, he is being placed in conversations that stretch across generations. And that is not something that happens by accident. It is the result of consistency, of discipline, of making choices that prioritize longevity over quick wins. And this is where his journey starts to feel less like a climb and more like a position, because he is no longer trying to reach a level, he is maintaining one. I think a lot of us YouTubers know how that goes. And, that requires a different kind of awareness. It really does. A different kind of control, because now every move contributes to a larger narrative. Every project adds another layer to how his story will be understood over time. And what defines his this phase is not just the success, but the intention behind it, the decision to step back when necessary, to step forward with purpose and to continue building on a foundation that started long before the spotlight ever found him, showing what he created was never meant to be temporary. It was meant to last, longevity, right? It's a little early, but we're going to take our little break. I shall return.
She came from the quiet storms, built a fire from the ground, turned a whisper to a warning. Now her voice shakes the town. Every setback was a lesson, every doubt became a key, unlocking something bigger. That's the rise of Boss Bee. When the lights go low, her vision hits high. She built a whole damn network off a promise and a try. Every sunrise, every moment, she's stacking legacy. This ain't just a channel, this is BBTV. A Boss Bee rising, BBTV's igniting. Turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel roads to the neon dreams, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss Bee rising, sky ain't even the ceiling. When she hits go live, everybody feels it. She's the queen of the comeback, storm in the street, crafting stories out of heartbeats, making visions out of dreams. Got thunder in the hustle, got a voice that cuts clean. Every mic she touches turns to power unseen. Let birds spin the numbers, let the views rise slow or fast. Boss Bee doesn't measure wins by echoes of the past. This moment is a pivot, this season's history. Bow down to the founder of the BBTV dynasty. Boss Bee rising, BBTV's igniting. Turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel roads to the neon dreams, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss Bee rising, sky ain't even the ceiling. When she hits go live, everybody feels it. She's got fire in the head, it's got truth in the frame, got a heart that won't retire and a gift you can't name. Every loop, every letter, every dream she sets free, it's a love note to the world sign. Boss Bee. And the world keeps watching as the numbers climb, but she's counting all the moments, not the dollar signs. From the late night grind to the daylight scene, she's building something bigger than the algorithm's dream. Boss Bee rising, BBTV shining. Her story's rewriting a legacy in real time. Boss Bee rising, BBTV's igniting. Turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel roads to the neon dreams, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss Bee rising, sky ain't even the ceiling. When she hits go live, everybody feels it. BBTV, where the stories breathe. BBTV, where the dreamers believe. Boss Bee rising, watch her take her place. This is BBTV, this is her grace.
Alrighty, we are back. So, by the time that Bruno Mars breaks through and the world finally knows his name, it would be easy to think that this is the point where everything settles into place, where the hard part is over and the rest is just maintaining what he's already built, right? But what actually happens next is where his journey becomes more defined because now the challenge isn't getting in the door, it's deciding exactly who he is once he's inside. And that sounds simple on the surface, but it's one of the hardest parts of the artist's path. Because early success comes with expectations, and those expectations can quietly start shaping you if you let them, pushing you towards that what worked before instead of what you actually want to become. And in Bruno's case, the industry still doesn't fully understand where to place him because even though the hits are there, he doesn't fit cleanly into one category. He's not just R&B, not just pop, not just anything that can be labeled quickly and move through a system that creates a kind of pressure that isn't always obvious because now he has attention but not full definition. And this is where a lot of artists get stuck, repeating what works, staying safe, holding on to the version of themselves that got them in the room. But instead of doing that, he starts leaning into something that has been with him from the very beginning, something that goes all the way back to those early performances, which is the idea that music isn't just about the sound, it's about the full experience, the stage, the movement, the band, the feeling of being part of something live and real. And you can see that shift as his music evolves because instead of chasing the current trend, he starts building songs that feel like they belong to a different era while still existing in the present, pulling from funk and soul and classic performance styles, not in a way that copies, but in a way that understands where those sounds come from and why they last. Now, this is where his identity begins to take shape in a way that people can recognize. Because now you're not just hearing Bruno Mars, you're experiencing him. And that difference starts to separate him from a lot of what is happening around him at the time. Because while other artists are leaning into production and digital layering, he's leaning into musicianship, into live instrumentation, into the kind of detail that shows up not just in how a song sounds, but in how it feels when it's performed. And that choice matters because it's not the easiest path. It's not the fastest way to stay relevant, but it's the way that builds something that can last. And he moves into projects like Unorthodox Jukebox. You can hear that expansion more clearly. The willingness to take risks, the step outside of what people expect, to push his own sound into different spaces without losing the core of who he is. That at the same time his performances are evolving too, becoming more controlled, more precise, more intentional. And that's where the influence of artists like Michael Jackson, Prince, and James Brown become more visible. Not because he's trying to be them, but because he understands the elements that made them powerful. The way they command a stage, the way they control a crowd, the way they turn a song into a moment that people remember. You know, as an example, Queen. That was one of the biggest things about Freddie Mercury was his ability to command the crowd. You know, when he would sing first and they would copy him, that was huge back then. And it's still huge now. You know, people remember those moments and those elements start to come together in his work. When you can get a crowd to sing the same notes you just sang, it's amazing for the artist. Can you imagine the experience also as the listener? Because you get to go home and say, hey, I sang with this artist tonight that I got to see, right? So elements start to come together in his work. The conversation around him begins to shift because now it's not just about whether he has hits, it's about what kind of artist he's becoming. And that shift is important because it moves him out of the category of someone who can be replaced and into the category of someone who is defining his own space. And that becomes even more clear when you reach the point where everything clicks on a global level with Uptown Funk. Because that song isn't just successful, right? It's everywhere. It crosses generations. I'm 54 years old and I know every word to that song, I guarantee you. I will dance with it too. It pulls from other influences and makes them feel current again. It really does. So a 54-year-old like me, it sounds like, hey, back in the day, I hate those words, but yeah, back in the day, I felt that. I feel it now. And the best part about music is how it makes you feel, right? So suddenly the risk that he was taking in leaning into those sounds and building something rooted in performance and musicianship pays off in a way it just can't be ignored. And from that moment forward, he's no longer trying to prove that he belongs. He's setting a standard for how this kind of music can exist in the modern space. And what makes this part of his journey stand out, it's not that it was built on chasing what's popular, it was built on refining what he already knew was there. Taking every single thing he ever learned from the beginning, from those early stages to the years behind the scenes, and shaping it into something that feels complete, something that feels intentional, something that shows he is not just part of the industry, but actively shaping what it looks like. When an artist chooses identity over convenience and builds something that doesn't just work in the moment, but holds its place over time. And even though it's a different industry, a lot of YouTube creators could learn from that. Seriously. Because I am. Honestly. So, by the time you reach closer to the present, I guess, this final point in Bruno Mars's journey, our journey tonight, not his. He's still alive and kicking. The story shifts just one last time because now it is no longer about how he got here or even how he maintains his position. It becomes about what he represents in the larger picture of music itself. Because when an artist reaches a level where their work connects across generations, where people who grew up in completely different eras can hear something familiar in what they're doing, they stop being just a successful artist and start becoming part of a lineage, part of a continuation of something that existed long before them and will exist long after. And what makes Bruno Mars's place in that lineage stand out is the way he balances that connection between past and present. Because he is not simply borrowing from older styles or recreating them, he is translating them, taking the elements that made those eras powerful, the group, the live instrumentation, the stage presence, the feeling of performance that is meant to be experienced, and bringing them forward into a space where they can exist alongside modern production, modern audiences, and modern expectations without losing what made them matter in the first place. So that kind of balance, it requires more than talent. It requires awareness, understanding, Not just what sounds good, but why it sounds good, why certain performances stay with people, why certain songs last beyond their moment. And that understanding is something that has been building in him since the very beginning. From those early performances in Hawaii to the years spent behind the scenes learning how songs are constructed. And now all of that shows up in the way he carries himself as an artist, in the way he chooses what to release and when to do that, right? In the way that he approaches collaboration, in the way that he steps onto a stage and turns a song into something that feels alive in real time. And as you look at where he stands right now, you start to see that his impact is not just measured in charts or awards or numbers. It's measured in influence, in the way other artists begin to move, in the way the industry begins to shift, and and in the way the audiences begin to respond to something that feels a little more grounded, a little more connected, more real. And that is where his journey expands beyond his own career and becomes a part of something larger. Because now he is not just part of the conversation, he's helping shape the conversation, helping define what it looks like for an artist to honor the past without being trapped in it, to create something current without losing depth, and to build a career that is not based on chasing trends, but on understanding what lasts. And as that continues, his role becomes clearer, not just as someone who followed in the footsteps of artists like James Brown, Prince, and Michael Jackson, but as someone who now stands in that same line, someone who will be referenced when future artists look back and try to understand how to bridge those worlds. It's how to take what has already been done and make it feel new again. And what makes that even more meaningful is the path he took to get there, because it was not a straight line. It was not a single breakthrough moment. It was a series of steps, of adjustments, of learning. That sounds so familiar. Hello, YouTube. Of building, of moments where things did not work the way they were expected to. And he had to adapt, had to shift, had to keep moving forward, even when the outcome was not guaranteed. And when you step back and you look at the entire journey from beginning to now, what stands out is not just the success, but the consistency of that approach. The decision to keep building, to keep refining, to keep leaning into what felt true instead of what felt easy. And that is what turns a career into something lasting, something that continues to grow even after the initial breakthrough has passed. And as his story continues from here, because it is still continuing, still evolving, still adding new layers. What you are left with is not just a finished narrative, but an ongoing one. A journey that does not end with a single moment of success, but continues to expand with each new step, each new project, each new performance, reinforcing the idea that what he built was never meant to be temporary. It was meant to last. And that is where the story sits now. Not as something complete, but as something established, something that has proven itself and continues to grow. It exists not just in the present, but as a part of the longer story of music itself. And you got to give the man props, because, I mean, he's come a long way in a very short time, right? So when you step back and you look at this entire journey from beginning to where it stands now, I mean, guys, come on. Everybody is doing the new dance trend. with Bruno, right? I just might. Come on. I've swayed to it myself. But what really comes into focus is not just the success, right? Not just the hits, not just the performances, but the way everything connects, the way each phase builds into the next, because nothing in this story stands alone. The early years on stage, the move that reset everything, the time spent behind the scenes learning how the industry actually works, the gradual breakthrough, the moment where identity starts to take shape and decision to lean into performances and musicianship instead of chasing trends. The control that comes with understanding your place in the industry, all of it adds up to something that feels complete, something that feels intentional. And when you see it that way, it stops being a story about one artist and starts becoming a reflection of what it takes to build something that lasts. Because what Bruno Mars represents now is not just a current access or success, pardon me. It's a connection point between where music has been, where it is going, and a reminder that understanding the foundation matters just as much as creating something new. And that's what gives his work the ability to move across generations, to feel familiar and fresh at the same time. And as this journey continues, because it is still continuing, still evolving, still adding new layers, what you're left with is not a finished story, but an ongoing one. Something that keeps building with each new step. And that's what we're here for, to follow those paths, to connect those dots, to understand exactly how these stories unfold in real time. So if you've been riding through this journey with me, make sure you stay connected. Make sure you're part of the conversation, because this doesn't stop here. It keeps moving. And so do I. Y'all know me. I try. Pretty busy lady, but I do my best to be here every single time. Dry and everything, right? So, yes, unfortunately, that is the show for tonight. I think that one person that's been sitting here with me all this time, you are very much appreciated, and I love you. You know, the other 3 million people, well, they'll be back for the replay. Thank you guys for being here with me. Whoever shows up, whoever hits the replay, you know I love you, all of you. And boss man, let me know how you are. Also, do not forget to get over there and see my besties over there at Tuber Chat, because I'm telling you right now, they are amazing people. And he has got so many cool people that he brings up on his stage all the time. I'm not even going to try and justify how amazing these people are, and I need you to get over there. So, also, Big Jack, Iron Sharpening Iron Universe, y'all got to get over there too now, because, hey, we got a lot of good conversations going on. I will see you all Monday afternoon, hopefully, all 4 billion of you, because that's how many I got, right? Nope, 3 billion. Never mind. Alrighty, go visit Tuber Chat. I love you guys. And hey, I'll buzz you later.
I want to take a minute to shout out Tuber Chat. If you're a creator who's tired of surface level advice, says, and actually wants to understand how YouTube works, that's the space. It's real conversations with real creators who are in the trenches, building channels, testing ideas. No posturing, no gatekeeping, no fake guru energy, just people sharing what's working, what isn't, and why. If you're serious about growing, learning, and not doing this alone, check out Tuber Chat. The link is in the description. If you're enjoying this show, subscribing is the easiest way to support what's being built here on BBTV. You'll see the join button right next to subscribe.
No pressure, no expectations, just an option for people who want to support the channel in a real way.
We're live every day at 3 p.m. Central now.
And don't worry, we didn't change the heat, just the clock. And if you've got a story you want to share, send it in. Anonymous is always fine.
Boss be rising, BBTV.